Commander Viria opened her eyes to cold metal walls. The air smelled sterile, like a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. A dull pain throbbed in her side, and as she shifted, she realized she was lying on a medical bed. The dim light above hummed softly. It took her only a moment to understand. She was a prisoner. She remembered the battle. The Sillary fleet had been ambushed near the human-controlled sector. Her ship had been shot down, and before she could activate the self-destruct sequence, she had blacked out. Now she was here, a human base. Her mind immediately sharpened. Humans were known to be merciless. The Sillary High Command had always warned about their brutality. They did not take prisoners. They took revenge. A hiss sounded from the metal door. Viria turned her head sharply, muscles tensing. A human man stepped inside. He wore a dark uniform with golden stripes on the shoulders, his face calm but unreadable. He was tall, well-built, and his sharp eyes studied her with quiet intensity. "You're awake," he said simply. His voice was steady, neither mocking nor harsh. Viria remained silent, watching him like a cornered predator. "I'm Captain Elias Grant." The man continued, stepping forward. "You're in a secured medical bay. You were injured when your ship went down. We treated your wounds." Viria narrowed her eyes. Why would they treat her? A prisoner was not given kindness. This was a strategy, a trick. She sat up slowly, her body stiff but functional. "Spare me the false kindness, human," she said, her voice sharp. "What do you want?" Elias exhaled, crossing his arms. "I want answers, of course. And I imagine you want answers too." Viria scoffed. "I already know what happens next. You'll torture me, force information from me, then dispose of me." Elias frowned slightly, as if the idea displeased him. "You've been misinformed. We don't torture prisoners." She almost laughed. "Lies. Humans are not merciful." Elias studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Is that what your people tell you? That we enjoy pain? That we are monsters?" Viria didn't answer, but the slight shift in her expression told him enough. Elias sighed. "We could have left you to die on the battlefield. We could have treated you like an enemy who didn't deserve help. But we didn't. You're here, alive, because we don't see you as just an enemy." Viria clenched her jaw. His words unsettled her. This was not how humans were supposed to behave. This was not the ruthless enemy she had prepared to fight. Elias stepped back. "You need rest. There's food if you're hungry. No tricks. Just food." He gestured toward a small table where a tray had been left. Then, without another word, he turned and left the room. The door hissed shut behind him. Viria sat in silence, her heart still racing. She looked at the tray of food. It was nothing extravagant, some sort of bread and soup. She expected poison, but logically, it made no sense. If they wanted her dead, she wouldn't be here. Her body ached from hunger, but she hesitated. Eating human food, it felt like accepting their kindness. But what other choice did she have? She reached out, lifting the spoon carefully. The warmth of the soup spread through her fingers. She took a slow sip. It was simple but filling. As she ate, her mind swirled with confusion. What was this game the humans were playing? Whatever it was, she would find out soon. Commander Viria had spent her entire life preparing for war, but nothing had prepared her for this. Being a prisoner in a human base, treated not with cruelty, but with patience. It unsettled her more than any battlefield. She sat in the small, cold room that served as her holding area. The walls were metallic, the lights dim, and the only furniture was a simple bed and a table. There were no chains, no bars, just a locked door. It was strange. She had expected to be thrown into a dark, filthy cell, but instead, she had been given medical care, food, and even a clean uniform. Why? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door unlocking. She immediately straightened, her warrior instincts sharpening. The same human, Captain Elias Grant, stepped inside. He carried a small device in his hand, something that looked like a tablet. His expression was calm, unreadable. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Viria folded her arms. "Why do you care?" Elias exhaled through his nose. "Because you're under my responsibility now. Whether you believe it or not, I don't intend to treat you unfairly." She narrowed her eyes. "You expect me to believe that?" Elias shrugged. "Believe whatever you want, but actions speak louder than words, don't they?" Viria clenched her jaw. She hated how rational he sounded. She wanted him to act like the monster she had been told humans were. It would make it easier to hate him. But so far, he had done nothing cruel. Elias pulled up a chair and sat across from her, tapping on the tablet. "I have questions. You have answers. Let's talk." Viria let out a sharp breath. "So, the real reason you're here. You want information." "Yes," Elias admitted without hesitation. "And I imagine you want answers too." Viria leaned back, studying him. "Why are humans fighting this war? You claim to be different from what I was told, yet your kind destroys our fleets, our worlds." Elias didn't react immediately. He seemed to think about his answer carefully. "We didn't start this war, Viria." She stiffened at hearing her name. Elias continued. "Your empire invaded human colonies first. We defended ourselves. The war grew because neither side was willing to back down. And now, we're here." Viria scoffed. "You paint humans as the victims, but I've seen what your soldiers have done. I've seen entire Sillary cities burned." Elias's expression darkened. "And I've seen human cities turned to dust by your empire. War makes monsters of everyone, but the difference between us is that I don't enjoy it." Silence stretched between them. Viria's mind raced. She had spent years hating humans, believing them to be heartless invaders, but now, this human was showing her something else. Doubt, exhaustion, even regret. It was unsettling. She turned her gaze away. "Even if what you say is true, it doesn't change the fact that I am your enemy." Elias sighed. "Maybe. But enemies don't have to stay enemies forever." Before Viria could respond, the door suddenly hissed open. A human soldier stepped in, his posture rigid. "Captain, I need to speak with you." "Now." Elias stood, nodding. "Stay here. I'll be back." He cast one last look at Viria before leaving, the door sealing shut behind him. As soon as he was gone, Viria exhaled sharply. "This human is dangerous, but not in the way I expected." He wasn't torturing her, wasn't forcing answers out of her. He was making her question everything she believed. She clenched her fists. "No, I won't let them change me. I am Sillary. I am a warrior." But as she sat in silence, the doubt in her heart only grew. Viria sat alone in the cold, metallic room, her mind troubled. The human captain, Elias Grant, was unlike any enemy she had imagined. He spoke with reason, not cruelty. He treated her like a person, not a prisoner. It was unsettling. Why would a human show mercy? She ran a hand over her arm, feeling the smooth fabric of the uniform they had given her. It wasn't the armor of a Sillary warrior, but it was clean and comfortable. Too comfortable. It made her feel weak, as if they were trying to make her forget who she was. The door hissed open. Viria immediately straightened as Elias stepped inside. He wasn't alone this time. Another human followed him. A woman in a medical uniform, holding a tablet. Elias crossed his arms. "You haven't eaten much since yesterday. Our doctor wants to check your condition." Viria's eyes narrowed. "I don't need human treatment." The doctor, a woman with short black hair, sighed. "It's not about what you want. You lost a lot of blood, and your body is still recovering. We need to make sure you don't collapse." Viria glared but said nothing. They were concerned about her health. Elias stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "If we wanted to harm you, we wouldn't have saved you in the first place. Viria hated that his words made sense. But that doesn't mean I trust them. The doctor moved closer, scanning Viria's arm with a small device. A soft beep followed. The doctor nodded. You're healing well, but you need proper nutrition. Viria scoffed. Worried your prisoner will die before you get your answers. Elias shook his head. I told you before, Viria. You're not a prisoner. You're our responsibility now. Those words made her heart tighten. Responsibility. That was not how enemies spoke of each other. The doctor finished her scan and stepped back. She's stable, but she needs rest. If she refuses to eat, I'll have to intervene. Elias nodded. Understood. The doctor left, leaving the two of them alone once again. Silence filled the room, heavy and uncomfortable. Viria finally spoke. What do you really want from me, Captain? Elias studied her for a moment. Understanding. She frowned. Understanding. He exhaled, rubbing his temple. This war has gone on too long. Too many people, on both sides, have died. I want to know why. I want to understand if there's a way out of this cycle of destruction. Viria let out a sharp breath. You think talking to me will end the war? Not immediately, Elias admitted. But maybe it's a start. She shook her head. You're a fool. Maybe, Elias said with a small smirk. But I'd rather be a fool who tries than a warrior who only knows how to kill. His words hit something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to face. For years, she had been taught that humans were ruthless, that they wanted nothing but Sillary destruction. But now, sitting across from this human, she saw something different. Could it be that everything I was told was a lie? Viria clenched her fists. No, I cannot afford to doubt. Doubt is weakness. She stood abruptly. I don't care about your war, Captain. I just want to know what happens to me now. Elias studied her before answering. That depends on you. Viria frowned. What do you mean? Elias stepped closer. You have a choice. You can continue seeing us as monsters, remain our enemy, and be treated as a captured soldier. Or, his voice softened, you can try to see for yourself what kind of people we really are. A long silence stretched between them. Viria wanted to refuse. She wanted to call him a liar, but deep down, something in her hesitated. She had spent her life preparing for battle, but now, for the first time, she wasn't sure what she was fighting for anymore. Viria followed Captain Elias Grant through the winding corridors of the ship, her sharp eyes scanning everything. The walls were smooth metal, lined with faint blue lights. The air smelled clean, too clean, so different from the battlefields she had known all her life. Humans moved about, their voices filling the space. Some spoke in low tones, their eyes flicking toward her with curiosity or caution. Others whispered when they thought she wasn't listening. That's her. The Sillary warrior. She looks dangerous. I can't believe the captain is letting her walk around. Viria ignored them. She was used to being watched. Fear and respect were things she had earned long ago. But this was different. These humans didn't fear her like enemies. They feared her like an unknown creature, something unpredictable. She didn't know which was worse. Elias led her into a large common area. It was a wide room with round tables and seats, where crew members gathered to eat and talk. A few humans paused mid-conversation as they saw her enter. Viria straightened, her warrior instincts kicking in. If they attack, where's the nearest exit? How fast can I move? What weapons do they carry? Elias, however, walked in like nothing was wrong. He gestured toward a table. Sit. Viria hesitated but obeyed. She kept her posture firm, ready for anything. A moment later, a young human with dark hair approached. He placed a tray of food in front of her and smiled nervously. I thought you might be hungry. Viria raised an eyebrow. You bring food to an enemy. The young man hesitated, then shrugged. The captain says you're not our enemy right now. So, might as well be polite. Viria glanced at the tray. Steamed vegetables, roasted meat, something that smelled sweet. She picked up a piece of the meat and took a bite. It was warm, tender, surprisingly good. The young man grinned. "I'm Davis, by the way." Viria studied him. He looked nothing like a soldier. His hands were too clean, his body too relaxed. "You are not a warrior." Davis shook his head. "Nope. I'm an engineer. I fix things." Viria frowned. In Sillary culture, only warriors had value. Fighters earned respect. But here, this human engineer was treated as an equal. Elias leaned forward. "Humans don't just survive through war, Viria. We build things, explore, create. You'd be surprised what we can do when we're not fighting." Viria stayed silent. She had always believed humans were ruthless, war-hungry. But this ship wasn't a war machine. It was full of people who laughed, worked, and helped each other. Was everything she had been taught a lie? Suddenly, an alarm blared through the room. A voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "Warning. Unknown vessel detected. Approaching at high speed." The crew snapped into action. Elias stood quickly, pressing a communicator on his wrist. "Bridge, report." A voice answered. "Captain, it's a Sillary warship. They're demanding we hand over the prisoner." Silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Viria. She stood slowly, her body tense. A Sillary warship. That meant her people had come for her. Elias watched her carefully. "What do you want to do, Viria?" She was shocked by the question. Any other human would have locked her up by now. But Elias was still giving her a choice. She clenched her fists. The Sillary wouldn't negotiate. They would demand her return. And if the humans refused, they would attack. Viria looked at Elias, then at Davis, then at the other humans who had been watching her with wary curiosity. These people had treated her with kindness, despite everything. She had a choice. For the first time in her life, she had a choice. And she made it. "I want to speak to them," she said firmly. Elias nodded. "Then let's go." Together, they headed toward the bridge. Viria stepped onto the bridge, her sharp eyes locked on the main screen. The Sillary warship loomed in the darkness of space, its sleek black hull covered in glowing red symbols. It was a hunter, a ship designed for war, just like she was. Elias stood beside her, his arms crossed as the communication link opened. A towering Sillary figure appeared on the screen. His crimson armor gleamed under the cold lights of his ship, and his four glowing yellow eyes locked onto Viria with intensity. "Viria, you are alive," the Sillary commander said, his deep voice filling the room. "You will be returned to the fleet immediately." Viria remained still, her mind racing. She recognized this warrior. Commander Zorak. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Sillary military. To him, she was not a person. She was a weapon that needed to be retrieved. Elias spoke, his voice calm but firm. "She is under my protection." Zorak's eyes narrowed. "Human, you misunderstand your position. You will release her, or we will take her by force." The bridge crew tensed. Red warning lights flashed as the Sillary warship powered its weapons. The atmosphere in the room thickened with tension. Viria took a deep breath. She had spent her life following orders, obeying her commanders without question. But something had changed. These humans, this crew, had shown her something different. They had not chained her, not forced her into a cell. They had treated her as if she mattered beyond the battlefield. For the first time in her life, she was not just a warrior. She was a person. She stepped forward. "Commander Zorak, I will not return." A deep silence filled the bridge. Zorak's expression did not change, but Viria knew he was shocked. "You are Sillary. Your place is with us." "My place," Viria said, her voice steady, "is where I choose." Zorak's gaze darkened. "You dishonor yourself. You dishonor your bloodline. Have the humans poisoned your mind?" Elias did not speak. He simply watched, letting her handle this choice on her own. Viria clenched her fists. For so long, she had fought, killed, obeyed, never questioned. But now, she had seen another way of life. One where strength was not just about battle. One where she could be more than a weapon. She took another step forward. You see my choice as weakness, but I see it as strength. I will not return. Zorak's expression turned cold. Then you are a traitor. The communication screen cut off. Immediately, alarms blared. Captain, they're charging weapons. A crew member shouted. Elias didn't hesitate. Shields up. Prepare evasive maneuvers. Viria turned to him. Let me fight. He met her gaze, searching her face for any sign of deception. But he saw something else. Determination. He nodded. We fight together. The ship shook as the first Sillary blasts struck the shields. The battle had begun. The ship trembled as the Sillary warship unleashed another wave of energy blasts. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, and the sound of alarms filled the air. Viria braced herself against the command console as the vessel shook violently. Elias gritted his teeth. Shields at 40%. We can't take much more of this. Viria's sharp eyes flicked to the main screen. The Sillary ship was powerful, but it had weaknesses. She had studied its design for years. She knew its blind spots. Target their rear thrusters, she said quickly. That ship is a predator, but it needs speed to strike. If we take out its movement, we have a chance. Elias didn't hesitate. He trusted her. Do it. The weapons officer adjusted the ship's targeting system and fired a barrage of precision shots. The Sillary ship dodged, but it wasn't fast enough. Explosions erupted along its engines, sending it into an uncontrolled spin. Viria allowed herself a small breath of relief, but the battle wasn't over. The Sillary ship's communication link reactivated. Zorak's furious face appeared on the screen. You dare fire on your own kind, Viria. She stood tall. I fight for my own choice. Zorak's glare turned colder. You are no longer Sillary. You are nothing. Her chest tightened, but she refused to look away. Then so be it. Elias took a step forward. Leave now, or we finish this. Zorak remained silent for a long moment. Then, without another word, the Sillary ship powered down its weapons and retreated into the darkness of space. A heavy silence filled the bridge. The battle was over. Viria exhaled slowly. The weight of her decision settled on her shoulders. She was no longer a soldier of the Sillary. She had no home to return to. Elias turned to her. You made your choice. What do you want to do now? She looked at him, at the crew who had fought beside her, trusted her, accepted her. I will find a new path, she said firmly. With all of you. A small smile tugged at Elias's lips. Then welcome aboard, Viria. For the first time in her life, she truly felt free. Viria sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the metal wall in front of her. Her mind was a storm of thoughts. The human captain's words still echoed in her head. You have a choice. For a Sillary warrior, choices were rare, orders were absolute, obedience was law. But now, here on a human ship, she was being given something unfamiliar, freedom. It made her uneasy. Was this some kind of trick? The door hissed open, breaking her thoughts. Elias Grant stepped inside, holding a tray of food. The scent of warm bread and cooked meat filled the air. He placed it on the small table beside her. You didn't eat much before, he said. Figured you might be hungry now. Viria eyed the food but did not move. Trying to earn my trust, Captain. Elias smirked. If I were, would it be working? She scoffed. No. Didn't think so. He chuckled and took a seat across from her. But trust isn't built in a day. Viria hesitated before picking up a piece of the bread. It was soft, warm, human food. She had always been told it was disgusting, but when she took a cautious bite, the taste surprised her. It wasn't bad. Elias leaned back in his chair. Tell me something, Viria. Do you actually believe all humans are merciless? She chewed slowly, thinking. Finally, she swallowed and said, "That's what I was taught." Elias nodded. "And now?" Viria narrowed her eyes. "I don't know yet." "Fair enough." Elias crossed his arms. "You've seen how we treat you. Does this seem merciless to you?" Viria frowned. "A kind act does not erase war." "No, it doesn't," Elias agreed. "But war is fought by people. People make choices. The real question is, will we keep making the same ones?" Viria looked away. The weight of his words pressed down on her. She had spent her life fighting, killing. Was that all there was? She put the bread down and met his gaze. "What happens now?" Elias leaned forward. "That depends on you." Viria tensed. There it was again. That same answer. Her choice. Elias continued. "You can stay locked in this room until we reach the next station. Or, if you're willing, you can see more of this ship, meet the people aboard. Decide for yourself what kind of enemies we are." Viria studied him carefully. He was serious. He was offering her a chance to walk freely, even among his own crew. No warrior would ever allow that. "You trust me not to attack your people." Elias gave a small smile. "I trust that you're smarter than that." Viria exhaled sharply. He was right. Fighting here would be foolish. She was alone, outnumbered. But even beyond that, something inside her didn't want to fight. Not yet. Finally, she stood. "Show me." Elias nodded, standing as well. "All right. Let's take a walk." The corridors of the ship were quieter than she expected. There were humans moving about, speaking in hushed voices, focused on their work. Some cast wary glances at her, but none showed open hostility. Viria's sharp eyes scanned everything. Where were the weapons? The guards? Elias must have noticed her tension because he said, "No one's going to attack you, Viria. You're not a prisoner." She gave him a doubtful look. "Your crew doesn't seem to agree." "They're just being cautious," Elias admitted. "They know what you are. But they also know what I told them. You're not our enemy right now." Viria frowned. It was strange hearing those words spoken aloud. Not an enemy. As they walked, they passed a large window revealing the vastness of space. Stars stretched out in every direction, endless and beautiful. Viria slowed her steps. She had seen space through the cold, tactical screens of warships, but never like this. Elias noticed her gaze. First time seeing it without a battlefield in front of you. Viria hesitated before nodding. Elias smiled faintly. "It's different, isn't it?" She didn't reply. But deep down, she felt it. A strange, quiet peace she had never known. Before she could dwell on it, a new voice called out. "Captain, is this our guest?" Viria turned to see a human woman approaching. She was tall, strong, with a confident stride. Her uniform had a different emblem. Elias nodded. "Viria, this is Commander Holt, my second in command." Holt crossed her arms, studying Viria. "So, you're the warrior who nearly tore through our boarding team." Viria met her gaze. "You fought well." Holt smirked. "So did you." The two warriors stood in silence for a moment, acknowledging each other. Elias finally spoke. "Holt, I want Viria to see the ship, meet the crew. No hostility, no threats." Holt raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Understood. But if she tries anything—" Viria interrupted. "I won't." Holt studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then welcome aboard, Sillary." It was the first time a human had welcomed her anywhere. For the first time in her life, Viria wasn't sure where she stood, but she knew one thing: this was just the beginning.